Hello everyone, you know what this is. We're back arbitrarily ranking a Star Trek thing, and this time we're tackling Star Trek Voyager's two-part episodes. A quick caveat though, Caretaker and Endgame are not on this list. Just like with Encounter at Farpoint and All Good Things, while these episodes are sometimes broadcast in two parts, they were made with the intention of being uninterrupted feature-length episodes. Though there is a weird exception with Dark Frontier, which is on this list. While Dark Frontier is sometimes shown as a single feature-length episode, that one was in fact made as a two-parter with a distinct cliffhanger halfway through. You may disagree with that, and if you personally include Caretaker and Endgame, let me know where you'd rank them in the comments below. Before we jump in though, this video is sponsored by my gaming channel, SideQuest. Up until recently it's really just been a fun hobby, but recently we've committed to really growing the channel. Our main two series right now are deep dives, video essays, in-depth reviews and other analytical videos on our favourite or indeed least favourite games, and Licensed Game Hell, a gameplay series where we sit down and have a laugh playing games exclusively licensed from movies and TV shows. We upload something new every 2 weeks, alternating between the two series. It would really mean a great deal if you could show the same support to SideQuest as you've done on this channel. Head over by clicking the link down below to check out our videos, as well as subscribing so you can stay up to date with all the new uploads. Thanks again for supporting what I do, and with this promo out of the way, let's get stuck into the video you came to see. To kick things off, we have Workforce, which I doubt is a surprise to many. This is honestly a pretty decent two-parter. I don't think Voyager has any bad two-part episodes, it's just much weaker than the rest. It's a pretty interesting idea, and having the story begin after the crew have already been integrated into their new lives is a smart way of setting things up. The new personalities the regular characters are given are a nice way of shaking up the usual dynamics, and we also get to see some great stuff back on Voyager with the ECH in command for a brief period. That being said, there just isn't that much to this episode. The cast all put in solid performances, and the plot is a classic Star Trek adventure, but the story just isn't all that deep, and we do get a bland romance subplot between Janeway and Jaffin. A nice wee bit of Star Trek entertainment, but pretty forgettable in the grand scheme of things. Talking of bland romance subplots, we have a Unimatrix Zero in the next spot. For me, this was Voyager overusing the Borg by this point. Scorpion was easily the high point, but most of the other big Borg episodes never really lived up to that standard. Again, that's not to say Unimatrix Zero is bad by any means. There's plenty of thrilling action, the concept is pretty cool, and Janeway, Torres, and Tuvok getting assimilated as part of their plan is pretty ballsy. But once again, I feel like this episode defangs the Borg somewhat, despite another great turn as the Borg Queen by Susanna Thompson. For me though, easily the weakest aspect is the romance subplot between Seven and Axum. Axum is just so incredibly bland and uninteresting. There just isn't really any chemistry between them. Like Workforce, it's a nice wee bit of Star Trek entertainment, but with better action and richer ideas than the previous entry on this list. In the spot above Unimatrix Zero, we have Dark Frontier. I expect many people to be surprised by how low a lot of the Borg episodes are, but honestly most of them never really hit the bullseye for me. Dark Frontier is ranked above Unimatrix Zero though because this one gets the emotional thread right, at least in the first half. The Borg sphere heist is an awesome idea and full of palpable tension, but it's 7 of 9 learning about her parents and her life before assimilation, which is the highlight of the episode. I think the first half is very strong, but as soon as 7 is captured by the Borg, I think Dark Frontier really drops down a few pegs. Susanna Thompson is a terrific Borg Queen, but her choosing not to re-assimilate Seven and Janeway's eventual rescue just feel very contrived. The whole climax basically boils down to Janeway, Seven and the Queen standing around in a room shouting technobabble at each other. The episode is good, but overall it's just a bit of a letdown. And this is where I expect many people to disagree with me because above that we have a Basics. Now, I agree with most fans in saying that the Kazon arc from the first 2 seasons never properly took off. But ironically, the quick dash to wrap it all up means the end of this arc packs in a lot of action and drama. Part 1 is pretty standard stuff, with Voyager being lured into a trap, but Part 2 is really great. The crew fighting for survival, contending with an alien tribe, battling a giant snake monster. It all feels very TOS, and I love it. The fight to reclaim Voyager from the Kazon is something we've seen before in TNG and DS9, but Suter's arc is what makes it truly special. He's just such a tortured character, and Brad Dourif's signature screen presence really lends Suter's turmoil the appropriate sense of weight. As I said in my retrospective on Voyager, Basics showcases the kind of character drama and high stakes the rest of the Kazon arc was sorely lacking. Next up is Future's End. For me, this episode has such a voyage home vibe to it, which is lots of fun. I know not everyone is a fan of Sarah Silverman's character, but I thought Rain Robinson was a fun, quirky addition to the regulars. But for me, what makes Future's End work so well is the villain. Henry Starling is such an arrogant, egotistical douchebag. Ed Begley Jr. nails that character you love to hate, and every time he gets one over on the Voyager crew, it just makes the audience all the more keen to see him meet a grisly end. Much like the voyage home, this one is just an enjoyable sci-fi romp. The regulars get plenty to do, getting to grips with 90s Earth, and the Doctor finally stepping outside sickbay is huge. It's all around a crowd pleaser and embodies Star Trek Voyager's status as comfort trek for many fans. For our next pick though, we move into darker territory with Flesh and Blood. This two-parter combines two of my favourite things from Voyager, the Erosion and debates surrounding holographic rights. I've always liked how the Doctor has to fight for his equality, in contrast to Data, who was largely accepted by the Enterprise crew from day one. Flesh and Blood is really a story about the failure of empathy, but this failure also extends to the Voyager crew themselves. For them, they simply aren't able to see holograms as sentient beings worthy of the same rights they enjoy. It's refreshing to see these kinds of character flaws, as most of the time they adhere to the expected Starfleet ideals. The Doctor, therefore, is caught between two sides. He can sympathise with the plight of the holograms fleeing the Erosion, but he also can't let his friends come to harm. There are few easy answers in this one, and it conjures up a lot of compelling drama and surprising twists. Personally, however, I prefer the Killing Game to Flesh and Blood. As I said, I love the Erosion, and I think this is comfortably their best episode in the show. For an episode with such a weird and contrived setup, it flows together remarkably well. It's always fun to watch the regular cast break their usual type, and the French resistance cell narrative is compelling all on its own. But it's the Erosion and the conflict between Carr and his subordinate which steals the show. These conflicts simmer beneath the surface of Part 1, so they can explode outward in Part 2. Erosion vying for power, brainwashed Voyager crew contending with freed crew, a Klingon brawl in the streets against Nazi soldiers, the artificiality of the holodeck being exposed to the simulated characters. It's a finale which risks getting out of hand, but it's a testament to the strong script that it all works together. It's fun, dramatic, creative, and thrilling all at once. Now, these final three can honestly swap around depending on what mood I'm in, but for now, I'll put Scorpion here. Though as I said, on a different day, it might take the top spot. I said my hot take in my retrospective on Voyager, but I think Scorpion is actually better than the Best of Both Worlds. As great as the Best of Both Worlds is, I've always felt its second part is quite a bit weaker than the first. But if anything, Scorpion's second part is even stronger than the first by quite a significant margin. Introducing a new foe which is as threatening to the Borg as the Borg are to everyone else is such an ambitious idea, but I think the episode really pulls it off. Species 8472 are just so aggressive and vicious, deploying horrific bioweapons, committing shocking atrocities, and annihilating entire planets. You really get why the Borg are so scared to actually negotiate with Janeway. It's truly epic in scope, with some strong interpersonal drama between Janeway and Chakotay. Also, 7 of 9's first appearance as essentially a villain is one hell of a character introduction. While Scorpion doesn't take the top spot on this list today, I totally understand why others rank it so highly. But for today, I've chosen to place Year of Hell above Scorpion. I often hear a lot of fans saying Year of Hell is basically what Voyager as a show should have been in general, and it's a shame we never got to see this story as a season-long arc, as was originally planned. But even so, I still love this episode, despite the reset button ending. The utter desperation of the events raises the stakes through the roof. Here, Voyager's status as being cut off from the Federation actually counts for something for a change. Janeway's one-woman fight to keep the ship going, even after most of the crew have abandoned it, really solidifies her status as one of Star Trek's great captains. But the thread following Captain Anorax and his temporal warship is the true highlight of the two-parter. The time-centric story concept of the episode is strikingly original and feeds so perfectly into Anorax's character. The entire temporal meddling being a metaphor for Anorax's inability to move on from his guilt makes us really sympathise with him. As I said, the reset button resolution is a real cop-out, but that final scene showing Anorax once again working on his temporal weapon always gets me. While having this as a full season would have been awesome, Year of Hell is still one of the best. However, I've decided to give the top spot to Equinox. The whole thing almost serves as a meta-commentary on the show overall. While Voyager managed to maintain a TNG-like comfort level despite their great distance from home, the Equinox was in a much more desperate place, and so its crew felt justified in taking some moral shortcuts, to say the least. I'd love to see some novels about the Equinox at some point. I think they're a fascinating set of characters, and their function as a dark reflection of Voyager itself is masterfully done. We know how far Janeway is willing to go to get her crew home, making an alliance with the Borg, for example. So Captain Ransom saying she would have done the same in his shoes is pretty troubling and adds some extra depth to her character. The conflict between the two ships is ugly and brutal. The difficult moral questions it raises for the audience and the characters, for me, elevates it to match Deep Space Nine's lofty heights of great storytelling. For me, Equinox is not just the best two-parter, but probably my favourite episode of the entire series. So that's my ranking of Voyager's two-parter episodes. Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Once again though, this video is sponsored by my gaming channel SideQuest, and I'd really appreciate it if you could hop over to subscribe and show the content over there some love. Thank you for watching. If you like these videos, subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay up to date on my new uploads. If you want to help the channel grow, join my patrons or my YouTube members, where you can see videos early as well as some other exclusive content. Speaking of which, I'd like to quickly thank all of my patrons and members who are now appearing on screen. Have a good one, and as always, live long and prosper.